Well, I don't know, but I think Greenspan is right. The United States government cannot default because its bonds are in its own currency, and it can always redeem the bonds by printing money. So I do not think there's any possibility of defaulting on paying the bonds. Now, of course, if they print enough money to redeem enough bonds, and that money finds its way into the economy and circulates, then it can drive up prices, and it could drive them up very high. And so, but there's nothing unusual about the use of inflation to erode debts.
But before, they would never talk like that, at least when I've seen them. Now they're getting more and more out in the open, and he just said it like
Alex, it's what they're doing, isn't it? I mean, that's what quantitative easing 1 was. That's what quantitative easing 2 was. It was printing money to purchase the newly issued debt of the Treasury.
Do you think they'll announce QE3 at that event with Bernanke tomorrow?
I don't know whether they'll announce it, but I'm fairly confident they're going to do it. And whether they will decide, if they announce it, it's more troublesome than not announcing it and just doing it. I don't know how they'll judge that. But if they stop buying the bonds, you have to ask yourself who's going to buy them. Now, if the stock market keeps tumbling and going down, then you will have a lot of flight from stocks to bonds, and that will finance the deficit. As long as that flight goes on, there's a tremendous amount of money in the stock market that can exit. And or if the top is taken off gold and everybody starts saying, oh my gosh, it's going down, then you may have a flight from gold in the bond. So there are different things like that can finance it. Or if they get the rumor established that the euro is going to collapse because of sovereign debt problems, then you'll have all the flight from Europe into bonds, to American bonds. So there are other ways that they can finance this, at least for several years.
Sure, they're juggling. How long can the juggling last?
The juggling can last until the rest of the world deserts the dollar. That might take high inflation, or it might just result from people saying, look, they can't get their deficit under control, and they're going to continue to print money, and we're holding all these huge numbers of bonds, and we need to start getting out of it.
Let's finish up with the end game on the other side. Final segment straight ahead. Stay with us. We're talking to Dr. Paul Craig Roberts about where does all this end? Because we're already living the horrible recession, going into depression. We're already experiencing inflation in a lot of commodities. The dollar being devalued, QE1, QE3, is already causing increased inflation worldwide, but the banks are hoarding the bailout money, most of it, so it's not really causing the hardcore inflation. But we do see the Chinese lecturing us. We do see Putin saying America's a parasite. How about the parasites took over America? And I mean that's more like it. But I guess we are parasites at the end of the day if we let these parasites run us and control us. So Dr. Roberts, am I right in your view that we're really starting to get closer to the point of where it's almost a foregone conclusion that the dollar is going to die? The unthinkable is now thinkable. The only question is, how will that transition happen?
I think that's right. You know, the only way they can save the dollar, they would have to be able to greatly reduce the trade deficit, and they can't do that because of all the offshoring of jobs. And to get the budget deficit under control, they would have to be able to stop the wars and dramatically cut the defense budget. But the power of the military security complex is just too high, and the propaganda and terrorist scare has been effective for so much of the population. So if you can't get your trade deficit under control and you can't get your budget deficit under control, there's no way the dollar can survive. Now, the train wreck can be slow, and gradual, or just one day everybody could wake up and say, my God, what am I doing holding all these dollar-denominated assets? And it could be fast. I have no way of knowing. No one has any way of knowing. But I think it is true that they've got no way to control the budget deficit or the trade deficit, and therefore there will be a train wreck.
So just a few years ago, you were saying that there were some things we could do to reverse this. Are you saying that this couldn't be reversed, even if the right policies were put in place, because we've just been too deindustrialized?
If I was in charge, I could reverse it still. But the powers that be will not let politicians reverse it. You know, offshoring, it benefits the corporations and and shareholders because it increases profits. And so if you go in there and say, well, we're not going to let you increase your profits this way anymore, you're going to be up against the powerful financial interest. Similarly, if you say, okay, we've had enough of these wars, we can't afford them, they're undermining us, and so we're stopping the wars and we're cutting back defense, you'd be up against the military security complex.
Yeah, they'll just send hitmen to kill a few people to scare Congress, or they'll blow up a new building and say, guys with turbans did it, and everybody will fall down and worship them.
Probably either of these private interest groups are stronger than the president. And unless the president had a movement behind him, which included the security agencies, you know, if the CIA and the FBI and all of this are going to stand behind the president, then he could get away with it. Otherwise, he hasn't a chance.
You're right, and there'd still be a war. I mean, these entrenched bureaucracies and corporate interests, they're not going away.
And they're not going to just give up. You're right. They would test the strength of the president, and in my opinion, the way things stand, the president would not prevail. And anybody in the office knows that, and so he's not going to try.
Plus, they're brought up through politics from the beginning as stabled whores of these people, so they've got them on both ends of it. Dr. Roberts, thank you so much for joining us. You can just Google his name and check out all the books he's written. The latest is War of the Worlds, How the Economy Was Lost. I'll see you back tonight, 7 o'clock, prisonplanet.tv. Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.